are like everything Berger and I learned in law school that covers almost every facet of law. Every facet. It's mind-boggling.
And they were created thousands of years ago.
That's what, thousands. I mean,
well, the Torah existed before the world existed.
Was that all revolutionary?
So let's discuss this. So first of all, good morning to everybody. We started off with a Jewish question from our friend and lawyer Harvey, and he wants to know, when we went through some of the laws of Mishpatim, because it's connected to what we're doing with these modern day mitzvahs. We're going through the Mishpatim. As a lawyer, you say you were fascinated because these things seem to be, a proper legal system that covers everything. By the way, it's true. Every morning I learn with my dad over here in the shul. Some of you guys see me doing that. Warren comes every morning to say hello. And we're learning a tractate called Baba Kama. And it's literally legal issues. It's what happens if I am, you lent me, or you asked me to watch your dog. And while I was under my watch, it went and did something it would have never done ever. It just acted really weirdly and ate all the neighbors' chickens. Who has to pay? How much do you have to pay? Is there a system of any leverage the first time it happens? How irresponsible were you? Seriously, because it's a weird action. Everything, it covers everything in every different case. And there's laws of half damages and full damages and who has to pay. The Torah truly covers everything on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's not a bulletproof system that nobody could wangle their way through. It's a legal system. That's what it is. And so Harvey is asking, how revolutionary was this? Modern day, everybody has court systems. But for the Torah to come across with laws, with the Mishpatim and with the Chukim, it seems pretty revolutionary. So I actually don't know. I haven't really studied too many other religions. It looks like in the times of the flood, the issue was that people took law into their own hands. It was kind of just like in the animal kingdom, survival of the fittest, so do whatever you want as long as there's not somebody stronger than you who can beat you up. I think after that, though, there were kingdoms that there was a hierarchy of even before that there were, I don't know, I know that that Avram was born in the kingdom of Nimrod and Terach, and there were hierarchies and there were people who had a say about the law, and there were punishment systems. I don't know if it was as intricate as the Torah's laws, but the Torah truly does cover everything. So it's actually what I'm basically saying is that this is a good topic for discussion. It's maybe worth looking and historically looking at what there was. But I do definitely know that there were kingdoms, there were governments. I just don't know if the legal systems were as full as the Torah is. Either way, it's a good question. It's a fascinating point. The Noah laws were, so one of the Noah laws, by the way, one of the 7 Noahide laws was to create justice systems, court systems, which means to create legal systems. And that was created just after the flood. Hashem didn't really want to repeat. Until the flood, it was Adam. He was created. He was like this superhuman. He was an incredible being. He really was. He was created, God created him by hand. And he created him as an adult, Adam. And also Eve was the same thing. Yeah, there's different explanations as to. It says in the pasuk that God took one of his tzlaot, one of his bones, but there's different explanations. Some say they were Siamese twins. There's all sorts of ways of explaining it. Yeah, so Adam was the only man who gave birth to a woman. That's what it looks like, because it looks like Eve was created from Adam. But since then, the chain has been different. Now, the point is that there weren't proper laws then. It was more survival of the fittest. Since Noah, there's been a commandment on everybody that they have to have legal systems. Again, I don't know how good their legal systems were. I know that they had a commandment to be just, to make legal systems. I know that the Torah's legal system rarely covers almost everything.
It's just not the extenders, but Kiddushim is also filled with laws, but also laws about charity, which is fascinating. The gleanings. I don't. It's mind-blowing, but it's for another day.
So in the meantime, let's go through some of the Mishpatim, as is our course that we're doing now. I just wanted to, before we go on to the new mitzvah, which is the mitzvah of Mitzvah 17, which is a mitzvah pertaining to respect and respecting elders and Torah scholars, let's go back to just talk about what we've covered in the last few days that we've been doing this course. We spoke in Mitzvah 13 about, in Mitzvah 12, we spoke about the Mitzvah of Mezuzah. And we spoke about the order in which it has to be written and what the source for the Mezuzah is. There's just one extra thing that I wanted to add, and I think it's important. The angle of the Mezuzah and where it's put on the door. So again, remember what we said. A door is only obligated to have a Mezuzah if it has proper doorposts around it. Not every entryway has to have it. It has to have a side, another side, and what we call a mashkof. That means if you just got two walls that reach the roof, it doesn't qualify for a mezuzah. It doesn't mean you can't put a mezuzah there, but it means that you cannot say a blessing. It's not required, and therefore you're not allowed to say God's name as you put the mezuzah there. The mezuzah is supposed to be on the right-hand side of the door as you walk in. How do you know which side is the right-hand side? Both sides are the right-hand side, depending where you're going, right? So the rule that we use to govern this is that every room is in a house. There's generally a hierarchy of importance. Which room you spend more time in. So if you have your kitchen, which is adjoining into the room where you eat, you're going to consider the room where you eat the one that you're going into. Why? Because the whole point of the kitchen is to support that room. If you have a walk-in closet and a bedroom, so you're going to put it on the right-hand side going into the walk-in closet because you're going into the walk-in closet from the bedroom. So it's not a hierarchy of what the main room is, but you got to kind of figure out which is the room which serves which one. Which one am I going to generally, which is built to serve what? The kitchen was built to serve the dining room, but you're going from the kitchen into the dining room most of the time. Whereas on the other side, the walk-in closet was built to serve the bedroom, but on this time you're going to consider walking into the closet as the main thing, the opposite of walking into the kitchen. So it just depends on which one. So the rule that governs it is which room are you going into more.
Where does the hinge come into play? How the door was in the side of the hinge.
So actually the side of the hinges makes no difference. It has to be on the right-hand side as you go in. Now, so when you're going into your front door, it's one thing. When you're going into your garage, it's another thing. You have to put it on the right-hand side. Now, there are times when you'll make mistakes. Most times you're going to have to just use your own judgment, which room serves which. Even, again, not every house is used in the same way. Everybody has different ways and habits in their own homes, and therefore you got to kind of tweak it to the way you work best, which room serves which room. You got to also know that, so it's got to be on the right-hand side. Now, on the right-hand side itself, it's supposed to be, imagine dividing the right-hand side into three. Okay, a third, a third, and a third. It's supposed to be on the top third, but at the bottom of the top third. And it's got so far we've mentioned it's on the right-hand post, it's on the bottom of the top third, and now it's angled towards into the room. Now, that actually doesn't say much, that it's angled into the room. Let's say that this is the room and here's the mezuzah. Well, that's angled towards the room and that's angled towards the room. So which way is angled towards the room? So the answer is the top of it has to point. You're going to look at the mezuzah as an arrow, and the top of the mezuzah, the Shema Yisrael, which is right at the top, is considered the point of the arrow, and that has to point. But it can't be fully like that. It's got to be at an angle. Now, let's talk about why it has to be at an angle, because I find it fascinating. There's two opinions in the Gemara. The Gemara is, somebody asked me recently, and I actually gave the whole rundown. I'm not going to give the whole rundown now. The Gemara, the Talmud, the synonyms, Gemara and Talmud, are the ones they mean the same thing, the learning. Talmud means to learn, and Gemara is the Aramaic word for to learn. Both of these things are the written form of the oral Torah. The oral Torah was never supposed to be written. It was supposed to be transmitted over the generations, father to son, and that's exactly what happened, and still what happened and what still happens. The problem is that, have you guys ever played broken telephone? That's what happens in every family. Everybody makes one mistake. Before you know it, there's Omricon and there's all the different variants. So what happens is like this. Interestingly, there should have been, according to that science, there should have been tons of versions, every family. But the rule was as follows: that even if you made a mistake in like the way you taught it, everybody somehow knew, because it came from Moses. So everybody knew how we practice. So even when they were learning it, it seemed to make more sense this way or more sense that way. But practically pretty much everybody did the same things. They understood that this is how you do it. The question was how we got there. So if you look in the Mishnah and in the Gemara, very often you see arguing. He says you do it like this. He says you do it like that. At the time, they were probably both doing it the same way.
What's the difference? So the Gemara is the topic.
Yeah.
And the Mishnah is the discussion.
So here's the thing. There's actually a history to how the oral Torah got jotted down. Initially, it wasn't jotted. It was never supposed to be jotted down as instructions on this is what you're supposed to do. Remember, it's all oral. The thing is, people had to take notes because of how much was going on. It's kind of the opposite of evolution. People just couldn't handle all this information as time went on. And also, with the prosecution against Jews, people made it illegal to study Torah and to learn Torah. So that's how the dreidel came. That's how the invention of the dreidel. Kids were learning Torah, came the Greek soldiers, and they said, no, we're just playing dreidel. These days, if you go to schools, it's the opposite. Kids are playing cards and dreidel, and the teacher comes in, no, we're just learning. But so what happens is they had to write down just like points. That's what the Mishnah was. It was point form. It was just little like speech notes, and from that was supposed to remind you the whole springboard of conversation and discussion. It was really genius notes that just cover all the main things and just like the bones, the skeleton of the whole topic. What happened was that maybe those genii understood it, but as time went on, they were so cryptic. So what they had to do is they had to expand on it, and that's what the Gemara is. So the Gemara is basically an explanation of the Mishnah. Now, what happens is often there's arguments. How do these arguments happen? Because it's different versions of understanding the same thing. It's surprising that sometimes when you read Gemara or you read Mishnah, you just like see that there's so many arguments. So like, whose religion is this anyway? But you got to understand that the beauty is that there's not so many arguments. Sometimes you feel that there's arguments, but in order to argue about something, and this is just a human fact, if you're going to argue about something, you're going to have to agree on probably 1,000 things first. If you're at the point where you're having a point of arguing, you had to agree on certain basics to get, and this is the detail which you're arguing. So the fact is, so there's maybe 2 or 3 opinions regarding some things, but that's like a miracle because of how many families this is coming from. And the key to the whole survival of it was that we do even when we don't understand. Our doing of the mitzvot is not limited to our understanding of the Torah, which teaches them. That means that I'm right now stuck in a sugya, which means a piece of Gemara pertaining to legal stuff, okay? And I don't understand it fully yet, I'm going to be honest. And every day I'm arguing it out with my study partner, my dad, okay? We're almost there, we're getting somewhere. But for the meantime, we know what we have to do. We know that this is the tradition, this is how we're just trying to get there. And even if we never understand it, we're going to keep the mitzvah. We know that this is what God wants, and that tradition never changed. People saw how it was done. It's just that the understanding of how we got to these things or differences of opinion formed. Now, when the Gemara has an argument, there's rules of how we know which side to bear with. Okay? We never do both. We know that if it's like one against many, then the many, besides for certain rabbis, and they can be, there's a whole system. Very, very rarely do we see a situation where he says like this, or he says like this, so we don't do like him, we find a compromise. Mezuzah is an exception to that rule. Some of the rabbis were saying that it has to be horizontal. And some were saying, horizontal and vertical. I was on YouTube, oops. Okay, horizontal, and others are saying it has to be vertical. And that's the point of argument. And by governing by regular rules, we would have determined either to do it horizontally or vertically. This is the mitzvah we do both. Do you know why? Because the mitzvah is on the door of our homes. It represents everything about shalom bayit, house, tranquility, working as a family. And the only way to do that is through compromise. That's a Torah void. It's not just a beautiful piece. It's compromise. It's the only way.
Well, the real way is just whatever the wife says.
Oh yeah, somebody told me. Well, I don't know. I don't think it's true. I think that like just us men are more vocal about it. But you know how much our wives are compromising for us. You know how much they don't say. They like pick their battles.
What about kissing the mezuzah?
What about kissing the mezuzah?
I see people kiss the mezuzah coming in, and some people also kiss the mezuzah going out.
Kissing the mezuzah is not a law. It doesn't say that you have to kiss the mezuzah. It's a custom. It's a minhag. And we know that minhag Yisrael Torah, the minhag, the custom of Jews becomes the holy in and of itself. But really, it says in the Torah when it speaks about doing a mezuzah, it says that you should write it as a sign on your doorpost, and Hashem will guard us through that. That's what it says. And the oral Torah, the Gemara explains what it means and how we write it. But the point is, when it goes on our doorposts, it's supposed to be a sign for us. So I guess the tradition was when you walk by to notice it, to keep it as a sign. The same way when we're doing Shema, we kiss our tzitzis. It doesn't really say in halacha to kiss the tzitzis. Just when you say the word tzitzis as a sign, you look at your tzitzis to actually get that, to make the sign. It became actually very political when they saw rabbis or people not kissing the mezuzah. People were very judged about 200 years ago. It was a real thing. In the times of the Baal Shem Tov, I don't know if you know his story, but before he became the famous Baal Shem Tov, he was a hidden tzaddik. He was an orphan, went about doing his thing. Nobody had heard the name. He was just a simple guy. And really, he wasn't. He was changing the world. He was doing revolutionary things. But nobody had to know about that. And when he was going to get married, by the time of his wedding, he still was in public. And his fiancée knew it, but his in-laws didn't know. They were very judgy on what type of a son-in-law they were going to get. And when he walked into the house, he touched the mezuzah and he didn't kiss it. And they were like, this guy is absolute. What good is this son-in-law to us? He's garnished. He's apostle trait. And you remember, that's the generation we were dealing with. I know right now it's very clear to all of us that, we don't judge. It's Hasidic philosophy. We don't judge. Every Jew has got a purpose. God put every Jew in their level of education, in their surroundings for a reason. It's because their ultimate purpose is to thrive in wherever they were put. We don't judge, we accept, and we make everybody reach their goals in their best environment. And that's the way it was set up. But we're talking now at the time before the Baal Shem Tov introduced this way of life. We're dealing with a generation where if you couldn't learn Torah, and that doesn't only mean mentally or capability-wise, also financially, not everybody could afford to learn Torah. So you were regarded as nothing. Basically, you owe us your money because we're learning Torah, and you're useless because you don't learn Torah. That's what it was. It's our ancestors we're talking about. I like how we're belittling that whole point of view, but that's where we all come from.
And by excluding them, that's what created these other, I don't want to call them sects, but other offshoots of Judaism. Yeah,
it was a very lowly situation. It was like the first time in history that it was that low. I mean, we're dealing with, I don't even know, I feel what was a lot of it was as a result of bad things that had happened just before. In the Jewish, there was the fake Messiah. There was a whole story. Yeah, there was a fake Messiah by the name of Shabtai Tzvi, who had a large following, and people really believed in him. And truly, he was actually a cult. And it was a very low time for Judaism. Just about 300 years ago, 400 years ago. So it's a lesson for another day. What happened over there? Either way, how did we get into that? So that's exactly what it was. So that's the generation we were dealing with. They were kissing the mezuzah, and that's everything. Warren, we'll get you in a second. Now let me just tell you what happened with his mezuzah. The Baal Shem Tov did actually kiss the mezuzah. A year or so later, they checked it, and it was paper. It was a broken mezuzah. It just happened to be the one that the Baal Shem Tov didn't kiss. He put his hand on it. It wasn't a kosher mezuzah. Warren, what's your question? Are you dropping out?
Respecting the mezuzah you put on as going to the bedroom should not be a clear case. The case should not be.
Right.
Should not be clear.
Yeah.
Because if it's open, you're showing disrespect. Whatever you do.
Can I tell you that the reason actually is not really, because the mezuzah is outside of the room. If your mezuzah is going to be on the inner side, it depends where the door is. If it's going to end up that the mezuzah is going to be when the door closes inside the room, then it can't be in a clear case. The reason is because you can't have any exposed holy scrolls in a bedroom. Especially at the time when you're using the bedroom.
Sleep. If you're unclothed.
Yeah, it's for when you're yeah. And by the way, for that reason that now, interestingly, there's no mezuzah at all in the bathroom, And I'm still trying on a quest to figure out why. I'm trying to figure out why, because in Judaism, we don't look at the bathroom as a dirty place. We know that God is with us in all our endeavors and everything that we do. So as soon as I find this out, I'll let you guys know. It might also be as a respect to the scroll. Why shouldn't we have a mezuzah in the bathroom? Like we have one in the kitchen, we have one everywhere. So anyway, so that's the mitzvah of mezuzah. I felt we needed more clarity. We spoke about it, but we never actually got down to the nitty-gritty laws. We got 5 minutes, so you don't have to kiss it, but it's good. It's good to get into the habit. I mean, now with COVID, maybe you should make sure to use gloves. Whatever, you can kiss it, you don't have to touch it. You can touch it, you don't have to kiss it. Whatever. Okay, we're now going to go onto mitzvah 17. Mitzvahs asay it's on page 30. Mitzvahs asay lakum mipnei sevo lachabei talmid chacham ulakum mipanov. It is a positive commandment. You guys have ruined me. It is a positive commandment to rise up before an aged man and to honor a Torah scholar getting up before him. Warren, you asked a few days ago, is there a mitzvah to help an old lady cross the road? So here's another time where we see that it's actually a positive mitzvah written in the Torah to respect your elders. It says in the pasuk, "Mipnei seva takum, v'hadarta pnei zakein." Mipnei, in front of a seva, which means it just says, a seva. What is a seva? We know that means a man of honor.
No, it's just a man with hoary head. What's a hoary
A white head, an old man, basically. So you basically qualify as an old man if your hair is white. For those of us who have hair. Now, and you should honor the presence of a zakein, an old man. What is a seva? A man of a hoary head means someone of advanced age, even if he is not a man of wisdom. One is I only know men of wisdom. But if there would be somebody who wasn't a man of wisdom that I maybe would have bumped into once, if he was old, I still have to stand up for him and honor him. One is duty bound to stand before him. Now, here's the thing, okay? Remember we spoke about how the mishpatim generally make sense. But there are some details about them which make less sense. So here's the thing. When you think about honoring somebody, you would think, just honor them. Just make sure that you make life as comfortable as possible for them. And do everything you can to honor them, to give them the due respect. But to actually stand up depends on the circumstances. You don't really, the truth is when it says stand up, it means that we should really try our best to stand up. However, it's also good not to make it obvious that you're doing it, because you don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. So I know people, with regards to their parents, when their parents are coming to the table, they don't sit down until their parents sit down. That way they don't have to stand up and make it any weird.
That sounds probably, I'm not sure, the open here right now, you guys are probably obligated to respect.
Warren, we are obligated to respect you regardless because you are a Kohen. So,
You're a Kohen.
That wasn't my fault.
You're the Kohen Gadol.
and your old age is your fault.
And you have a hoary head.
And you are.
He's been married for 61 years.
61
Last
years.
chapter.
So, yeah, that's pretty
You
huge,
know,
eh?
in 61 years, he's never had a fight. Then he won.
Somebody told me recently after their 50th wedding anniversary, the key is that the man always has to have the last word.
Yes, dear.
Yes, dear. Okay. But he is not obligated to stand up to his full height before him. So that means, guys, when an old man walks in, you can just do this. Just show that he walked in. Show your respect. You don't actually have to stand up all the way till you're in a completely vertical position. Just enough to honor him, to show, I acknowledge your presence. Hello. Okay. One is likewise duty bound to give honor to his Torah teacher, even if he has not learned most of his knowledge from him. So if you learned a bit from somebody as your Torah teacher, I guess you're supposed to honor him. You guys better not start standing up for me. Okay, I could be your great grandkids.
Standing up for us.
Exactly. So it's this weird thing where we both have to. Let's just we cancel each other out. Okay. But it is a great wrong to disparage or disgrace Torah scholars or to hate them. Whoever disgraces such scholars will have no share in the world to come. It applies in every place and time for both man and woman. L'chaim. Fantastic learning with you guys. Have a good day. Good morning, Elaine and Corey and Edward.
Okay.